Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome back to Learn English with me. Today we are going to be discussing ranking. Okay, we've discussed degree of comparison. We've discussed describing numbers and we've discussed describing percentages, and now it's time to discuss ranking. Okay, so as you can see here, I've prepared 5 phrases. In the first, second, last, place is always. Okay, so you can say in the first place, di posisi pertama, is. In the first place is weather, accounted for 40%, for instance. Or in the second place is always. Okay, here you can use is always. However, it depends on the time context. If it's the present, so obviously you must use is. But then if it's past, so you must use was. Okay? Right. Coming up next, I have ranked. So the phrase is ranked in the first or second or probably the third. Ranked in the first or second place is or worst. Or ranked in the last is or worst. Actually, the meaning of the second phrase is similar to the first, di posisi. Ranking pertama, ranking kedua, stuff like that, okay? And then the third ranking concept, here it uses the concept of superlative, yang paling, the most, yang paling, right? Or the second most, yang kedua paling. Or if yang paling sedikit, so you can say the least. Okay, and then the fourth one, you can use it was followed by, diikuti oleh, because it uses it. So obviously the previous sentence describes a certain data, and then it was followed by, diikuti oleh. Okay, and then the short concept of it was followed by is blah blah blah, comma, followed by blah blah blah. Okay, so here are the concept of ranking that you can use to describe a certain data, so your writing can be more interesting. Okay, so learn it, practice it, and repeat. I'd like to present three examples, and there you go. So the examples are taken from a pie chart. The pie chart is about the advantages and disadvantages of Bowen Island. This is a survey of visitors. Okay, as you can see here, that the most disadvantages is about the high cost of living. And then the next one is about the entertainment, followed by the weather, and then the food quality. Okay, so here, I'm going to read the example one by one based on the data taken from the pie chart. First version. Ranked in the first place for disadvantages is the living cost, accounted for half the total number of respondents. The second most disadvantageous aspect is dealing with entertainment, which contributes 25%. So, as you can see here, I used ranking phrases, ranking in the first place. And then, the next sentence, I used the second most disadvantageous aspect. Okay. And then the second version, I wrote ranked in the first place for disadvantages is the living cost, accounted for half the total number of tourists, followed by entertainment, which contributes 25%. So I use followed by, which makes it a bit different from the first version. I also wrote the third version for comparison. Although the number of respondents who claims that entertainment is nowhere near as high as those who dislike the living cost, it ranks the second on the list with 25%. Okay, so the second discussion is about variation of comparing. As you might have seen the previous video about degree of comparison, now we are going to be discussing the variation of comparing. Okay, I've provided 3 here and you can apply it later. So the first, we can use the phrase twice as blah 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 as, dua kali se. For instance, the first data is 50 and the second data is 25. So we can say twice as high as blah blah blah. Okay, dua kali se, twice as blah 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 as. Okay, for the second list of variation of comparing is 3 times as blah 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 as. The meaning is 3 kali se. Okay, so if you've got the data, the first is 75 and the second is 25, so we can say that the first data is 3 times as high as the second with 75 and 25 respectively, for instance. And then the next one is half as blah 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 as, separuh dari. Okay, so if the first data is 15 and the second data is 30, so we can say that the first data is half as big as the second. Okay, easy, isn't it? Alright, so that's all for variation of comparing. Alright, so for variation of comparing, I will present 2 examples, and there you go. So the example, the same as the previous one, I took it from the pie chart. It's about the disadvantages and advantages of living in Bowen Island. And I've explained the disadvantages, so I will directly read the example. Ranked in the first place for disadvantages is the living cost, accounted for half the total number of people in Bowen Island. Although the proportion of entertainment is only half as high as the cost of living, it is on the second most disadvantageous aspect of the island. So as you can see here, I combine the ranking and also variation of comparing by stating ranked in the first place and then the second most disadvantageous aspect. And then for variation of comparing, I say half as high as, because for the living cost it accounts for 50 and then for the entertainment accounts for 25. Okay, or the other way around, we can say that entertainment accounts for 25%, meaning that it is half as high as the cost of living, or the cost of living accounts for 50%, meaning that it is twice as high as the entertainment. Okay, so you can write based on your preference. Alright, the second example was taken from the advantages. As you can see here, the people is the highest advantages, followed by the scenery and then good accommodation, the culture and good accommodation. So here is the formulation of the writing Ielts task 1. As for the advantages, the people is on the first list, contributing to 1/5 of the respondent, followed by the scenery accounting for 35%. The proportion is just over 3 times as many as those who state that the island has good accommodation at 11%. Okay, so actually it's supposed to be contributing over 2/5, because 2/5 equals 40%, and as you can see here on the data, it accounts for 42%. Alright, and then from this example you can see that I combine the skills of ranking, and then the variation of writing percentage, and then the variation of comparing. For the ranking, I write here on the first list, and then for the variation of percentage, I write to fifth, and then for comparing, I say just over 3 times as many as, because here the number is 35% and 11%. Okay, so that will be all for the discussion of ranking and variation of comparing. Remember, keep practicing, keep learning, keep practicing, and repeat it. Okay, see you next time. Have a wonderful time. Bye.